Welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're so glad you joined us today. We're excited to have Claas Jambor here with us today at Spirituality Adventures. Thank you, Claas, for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me.
Yeah, Claas is a singer-songwriter, musician, somebody that I've followed for years. He has toured and performed on most of the continents in the world. I think all but Antarctica.
Yes, in South America. So invite me if there's a gig.
He's been on German MTV. He's performed before crowds of 10,000 plus people. He's done worship in people's living rooms. He's quite the artist, and I'm so pleased to count him as a friend.
Likewise, thank you.
So thanks for being with us, Claas. Yeah, so let's start with your kind of origin story, where you're born, and then kind of bring us up to how you and I first met.
I was born in northern Germany, and I mean my upbringing was a journey as well, because we moved around, and then we lived in Texas actually from when I was 5 to about 9, and then moved back to Germany. Then I moved back to the States when I was about 17. Then I moved back to Germany when I was about 18, and then moved back to America when I was 21, and then I moved back to Germany, and then it was just a lot of back and forth. And
why were you in America as a German when you were 5 to 9?
My dad is or was German military.
Right.
And a lot of Americans don't know this, but there's a lot of foreign troops on your soil, just like American troops are somewhere else. And so, yeah, my dad was Air Force and then flying Navy. So he was instructed in America. He was taught how to fly, and then he was called back as an instructor to a NATO base.
There you go. Texas, German Texas, man. All right.
I like Texas. I'm not going to lie. Texas is great.
Yeah. I lived there for 8 years, going to, Baylor and Southwestern Seminary. So I stayed there long enough to like a lot of people, but kind of like, I don't think I'm going to make this my permanent home. But at any rate,
I like the heat. So it's, I would like to live in a world where all I wear is flip-flops.
Yeah. And, we'd go down to Austin from Waco back when Austin wasn't a huge town, but it was still the funnest, closest town to Waco other than Dallas. But we always hit Austin for some reason.
Austin is great.
Yeah.
Austin's
fun place. Yeah. So what bounced you back here at 21?
I was helping out at a church plant. I was without direction, as many 21-year-olds are, and there was a church plant in Georgia that needed someone to help out and do some music, and so I just went there and volunteered and did whatever I had to do, and a lot of it was great and a lot of it was fun, but I was also thankful when it was over.
I've heard some of your stories from your Georgia experience. Crazy.
I mean, I don't want to dog on anyone in Georgia. Love the people in Georgia.
My mom's from Georgia.
My brother lives in Georgia. I love Georgia. There's nothing, I love peaches, and Atlanta is a great city. It's great.
Oh, man. The new Hollywood.
Yes, the new Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge fan of The Walking Dead. But anyway. But yes, Christianity and I, have also been on that journey where I connected with God as a kid, and my parents really had nothing to do with it. I didn't grow up in a Christian home per se, but my mom would pray with my brother and I in the evenings, and as a young child, I just took that very serious. And so when I was playing in the yard, I started to play with God. I didn't know anything. I didn't know really any Bible stories or anything. I just was communicating with this ominous being that I had heard of in those prayers, and where I, just didn't think about it. I didn't have any questions about it either. I just started talking to him and playing with him. And it was extremely real to me. And but it also laid a foundation where I can connect with God without necessarily an intermediary. Where later on, then when we moved back to Germany, it was there was a church quite close, and I started to drag my family there, and that's when the trouble started, and I saw the God's ground personnel starting to fight and bicker and just put rules on people and put conditions on being in or out of the inner circle, and it didn't really connect with me because my relationship was from playing in the yard with God. And so yeah, that laid the groundwork for lots of stress.
Interesting. So you literally go from playing in the yard with God and sort of having this intimate, personal kind of relationship to jumping into a church, and all of a sudden you're immersed in church politics.
Yes.
Church pettiness.
Yes.
Church dogma.
Yes.
Like a lot of the things that many of us aren't really all that fond of.
Yeah. And I mean, to be quite honest, when I was 9 years old, I could care less about Dogma, right? I mean, I think I got saved every weekend because every altar call that said, "Do you want to give your life to Christ?" It's like, well, of course I do. Still want to do it again today. Yes, of course I will. I ran up for everything. And of course I was a sponge to all the information, which then I didn't question. But what I did question was the way that people treated one another, and how some people suddenly thought they were closer to God than others because there were behavioral or belief differences, which those didn't make any sense to me.
Like if somebody didn't do something, they were closer to God. Right. Or if somebody had the right belief about a particular thing, they were closer to God.
Yeah, and in
those kind of things.
In this particular circumstance, at first, again, I was 9 years old. This is what I remember. It wasn't so much about the don'ts as it was about the do's, and about the how much are you praying, how much are you reading your Bible, how much are you doing this, and if you didn't live up to someone's standard, then suddenly you weren't in. And I was quite young, so maybe now I was 10 or 11, but I was taught in different circumstances that I need to, pray and have a conversation with God for at least an hour a day, that I need to read my Bible for an hour a day, that I need to do intercession for an hour a day, and then, since this was kind of Pentecostal background, then later also to speak in tongues for an hour a day. Well, that's 4 hours. So I actually got up that early to try to do all these things.
Wow. I'm impressed.
And when I would fall asleep in the middle of that, I would punish myself to adding that time that I fell asleep the next day. Because, of course, I had to get up and go to school at some point.
Oh, my goodness.
Needless to say, I had a huge middle finger growing on my forehead really quickly, because this had nothing to do, again, with the God that I met when I was younger, when I was a kid.
Interesting. Wow. And this was a church in Germany.
Yes.
Like up on the North Coast, where like near Schleswig or something like
exactly,
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the Baltic.
Yeah. And then so that was kind of going on. When did your music interest begin? When, like...
I guess I started playing piano over here, actually, when I was 5, started taking lessons. And I remember there was, again, I'm older, right? This is the 80s. I remember at one of these churches that we went to then, under the table, the guy who's, back then, we had these, it wasn't bookstores yet, it was just a table where all the books were sold. And under the table, one of these guys was selling a Striper record. It was To Hell with the Devil. And
Striper. Man, I haven't heard of that name in a while. Awesome. Wow.
And so I got that record and it completely changed my life. And I was like, why am I playing the piano? I want to scream into a microphone and play electric guitar, which, then I didn't do the electric thing, but I did pick up the guitar a little bit and I started to sing, and I was terrible at it. And it took me to get, past a certain puberty stage to finally find a voice.
There you go.
But after that, yes. I mean, I just always wanted stage. Didn't matter what. Probably if there would have been doors open for acting, I probably would have gone that route. But music opened sooner and there were more opportunities to do that. And so I just jumped on every stage that was there. Anywhere, anything, like to the point of if there was a stage, there was a banana eating contest, I went on that stage because I wanted to be on stage so bad.
Interesting. Now, was your family musical? Or is it just your mom kind of wanted you to do piano because she didn't do piano or something, or what?
It's kind of the thing to do. If your kids have musical interest, you give them lessons.
My mom tried to make me take piano and I hated it. So
She
finally gave up.
I hated it because they made me play things that I didn't want to play. Remember, I liked Striper, right? And then I had to play Mozart.
How do you play Striper?
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't work. And it took me till my beginning 20s until I started to appreciate classical music.
Yeah.
Now I love it. Now I have that running around the house the entire time.
Yeah.
But yeah, back then, no, I wanted glam metal, which I never did as a musician, but still, it was the 80s.
Yeah. So your beginning music then, it's kind of the stuff that you were doing early on was church worship.
Yes.
Contemporary type worship music, that kind of stuff? Or
yes. And I was playing keyboards for people or, doing backup vocals. And even then, it got cliquey really quickly where, the church politics of who was in and allowed to sing a song was, again, behavior-based and was based around who would be conformed to whatever opinions or directions that leader had. And if there is a God and I can connect with them, which I think I can, or at least I try, then someone else hearing direction for me that I can't, when I try to seek God and there is no confirmation in that, then that's just terrible. And I think it's then just pure manipulation. And that's kind of what I encountered a lot during my teen years there. And again, that's when that middle finger grew on my forehead, because it had nothing to do with the God that I met when I was a child. Because that God did not have the pressure. That God did not have the conditional things around it. I just played with them, and often it was superheroes. So yeah, then I got kicked off of worship teams frequently for the silliest things. I had long hair, very, very long hair, Striper, right? And then one day, one of the pastors came to me and said, I think you should cut your hair because you are too focused on the optical and you're focused on, that's part of your identity and you're just getting too much out of it. So I handed him clippers in that instance and said, well, then shave it off. Well, the other pastor fired me the next day because something must be wrong with me emotionally if I had just shaved my hair off. And it's just these stupidities that really quickly made me want to leave the local body. Now, I got involved in other ways because I do believe in community and I do believe in connecting with people. But yeah, these structures, sometimes they just piss me off.
When did you start writing your own music? Was it during the same period?
Well, I started writing music, I guess, immediately, even if it was just really simple melodies and experimenting with it. Actually writing songs, I was probably like 16, 17, around that time.
And were you writing worship stuff at that time?
No,
Okay.
it wasn't worship stuff. It was just songs.
Okay.
But I mean, I have a disconnect with that word anyway. I mean, I know it's a genre, and I get it, the vertical connection where it's, people singing together, congregational. But I was always convinced, and I remember being, taught everywhere I went, worship is a lifestyle. And so anything I sing about, to me, is an expression of worship. If I sing about a breakup, and if I sing about myself messing up, and if I sing songs about self-mutilation, and when I sing songs about depression, they are all part of my life, which, if it's supposed to be worship, then I also consider them that, while the vertical congregational songs are just that, right? I think there's a weird hierarchy that we put in the spirituality of our songs. I don't know what to do with the term Christian music either. It's music done by a Christian, or is it targeted to a Christian audience? I think it's just a marketing thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, I've spent the last, there was a time in my life where I would only listen to Christian music because when I was in college, there was kind of this idea floating around. This was in the 80s where, secular music would lead you astray. And if you played it backwards, some of it had even like demonic messages on it if you played it backwards.
Right.
And, I was a young kid, and I'd just come to faith in Jesus, and I was like, oh, well, crud. So I threw away all of my old rock albums, which I had back now.
Yeah.
And there was a season there where I didn't listen to much, and it just so happened that season was kind of like the hairband season, because I was kind of a prog rock guy.
Right.
But I eventually just, and I don't mean this, because I still will listen to what people would call worship or Christian music, but I would say the majority of the music I listen to isn't in that genre.
Right.
And I remember in the 80s, I started listening to U2, REM, and a few of those bands, and then I just kept at it, and then I kind of I really liked the grunge scene, and then, and so since then I've been listening to just all kinds of music. And I love that perspective that you just shared, because I do think all of life is spiritual. And so God, if God exists, then he's involved in everything. Yeah. And then all that music that you write is intimately tied with your spirituality and with God. And so, I kind of like blurring the genres, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool. I like that. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. So,
it's interesting when I look at royalty statements, and, there would be, I'm just, picking titles, but there'll be the song Jesus and Me, and the next song's called Sexy Bitch, because I wrote for some dance label, right? And then the next song's going to be whatever else. And it's just like, well, this looks really schizophrenic, but it isn't. It isn't, because it all belongs together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and let's talk about that a bit, because you started out writing all different kinds of songs, and you've really kept that up your whole life, right? Yeah. You haven't ever just written in one genre. Let's talk about some of those genres that you've written in. That's kind of fun.
One would probably have to start excluding genres. That might be easier. I haven't written jazz. I don't do jazz. I don't mind jazz, but I don't understand it. It's, when I listen to jazz and someone says this song is better than the other one, I don't necessarily agree. And whenever I was invited to write something jazzy, I always made it more poppy. So I actually ruined it. And let's take that out. I've scored, I've done classical stuff, I've I've done lots of advertising stuff. I've done a lot of EDM. I've done a lot of rock. I've done a lot of pop. I have one country-esque thing that got pitched once that actually worked. That was in a television show for a spell, or might still be. Who knows? So yeah, but yeah, I shouldn't be writing country. That's silly.
But
funk did a lot of that.
Okay, I do. Did you do hard rock, hairband rock, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I did. But more the beginning 2000s, which I guess the hair was shorter back then, but my hair was long again. Or the 90s style. I've always wanted to do like a Def Leppard-y project, but but I was just born 20 years too late.
That's funny. That's funny. So when we first met, I'm trying to think. How old were you when we first met?
That would have been late 90s, right? 23 probably. Around then.
Okay.
22, 23.
Yeah, and I think a friend of ours introduced us to each other. Philip O'Reilly, who's a pastor in the Northland area.
Yeah.
Just bumped into him the other day at the coffee shop. So
he's a good guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember what the connection was there, but Philip, I don't know how anyway, something came about.
Well, what I do remember was whatever the first connection was, you inviting me to play at a camp. I think it was a youth camp somewhere. Who knows where it was?
In Kansas somewhere.
Yeah, I have no idea. I was on a bus and I don't remember anything else about it. But what I do remember is that we housed together.
Yeah, we were roommates
in a bungalow type situation where we experienced one of the plagues.
Right. Serious. Like it's to this day, it's still the worst bug thing I've ever seen in my life.
We had a centipede infestation, if that's the right word.
It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen.
And literally, it was a floor that was crawling with centipedes. You couldn't see the floor. We vacuumed them away, and they would just come out of the walls and out of the floors.
Crazy. It could have been a horror film.
Yes, without squishing them and I mean,
crunching them when you get out of the shower.
Yes.
I mean, I'd never seen anything like this in all my life.
But it was a bonding moment.
Oh God. That's funny. Yeah, and so you and that was when in your 20s, and you were kind of bouncing around then between America and Europe, it seemed like. And you started at some point, I remember getting into, because I remember your MTV season. When was that?
2003 and 4, I think around that time, maybe a little bit of 5. Yes, I was the late 90s, beginning 2000s. I was still I was running the gauntlet of going through churches, leading worship, to use that term. I'm going to say leading the singing at churches. But then after 9/11, things got more complicated and things already that got more divided and political. And there's just a lot of the games that I couldn't play anymore. But then suddenly doors opened of publishing contracts and management contracts and record contracts and some recording and then tours and some chart success. And
was this mostly in Europe that this was taking place?
This was all in Europe.
Yeah.
This was all in Europe. And so I didn't really, I think I still did like some stints, like some concerts in the US, but it was mostly in Europe then.
Yeah. So you're basically, and were you writing were these German songs that you were writing, or were they both English and German? And when you were touring
they were all in English because, if you look at Europe as a market, now the German speaking market itself kind of goes back and forth between the second and third largest market when it comes to music. But if you want to do Europe, there's more languages, and so the default, especially in that time, was going to the Latin of the age, which is English. And so, yeah, if you have the idea of wanting to cross the borders of the German-speaking market, you have to, or at least back then we thought you had to then do English.
Right. So, so you were literally, you're a rock star touring in Europe.
A little bit. There was a day in the sun. It sure acted like one. I don't know if that was, yeah.
I remember you popping in on a few occasions to Kansas City during this time, stayed at our house, and you know, I always enjoyed the stories.
Yeah, it was fun. I think I came through Kansas City on a tour in 2005, I want to say. I was on a bigger tour here in the US with several other CCM bands. And
for those who don't know, CCM.
Oh yeah, contemporary Christian music.
There we go.
And again, I don't want to call it Christian music. It's just so weird. It's music done by Christians for an audience of Christians, which sounds like I mean that in a demeaning way. I don't. I just want to be honest about it. People would walk up to me and say, "Thank you for your ministry," and it's like, I'm getting paid.
Well, hey.
Yeah.
I've done ministry my whole life, and I have paid my bills. So anyway.
Yeah, I know. But still, you know, then I look at other people who are, I don't know, changing diapers on people in hospitals, and I'm on the stage getting applause and making money, and then calling it a ministry. Just it's my job. Let's just call it that. Yes, I still, I have an intention of it having a positive influence on people. I have a good intention behind it.
Sure.
But somehow ministry sounds self-sacrificial. None of what I did was self-sacrificial.
Okay. Well, but you were following your heart.
Yes.
And you were using your gifts.
Yes.
Yeah. And you probably had some really positive impact on people's lives.
I'm glad. I hope so.
You know?
Yes.
I think you probably, I know you did.
Well, thank you.
I know you did. So I was one of them.
Well, you can thank me for my ministry.
Yeah. And if I'd have followed your advice, I would have never left, I'd have never gotten off the rails. I would have stayed on the straight and narrow and all that. At any rate. So you kind of got this, you got some good success in Europe with your touring and your music and MTV and all that kind of stuff. But then you still, in America, you came and networked with this CCM crowd.
Yeah.
Is that right? And so in America, you weren't really touring your European rock band stuff, right?
No, I never really did that here.
In America, you were touring mostly with connections that you had in the CCM world. Is that a good way? Can we say it that way?
Yes, we can definitely say it that way. Even though the difference wasn't necessarily the songs, I did play the same songs here.
Okay.
Maybe not all the same songs, but I just didn't. I didn't tour with a large band with a big light show. Back then, tearing my clothes and burning them on stage and whatever, trying to be flamboyant as possible, which I'm not against that at all.
Right.
It was just, it was a different environment and a different culture.
We're going to have to find a video clip of that and roll it on this podcast for people who are viewing by YouTube, right?
Yeah, all this is way before YouTube. Thank God. Who knows the atrocities that will be on there. But yeah, I do remember on that tour, and my good friend Paul Coleman tells the story a lot. There was, I know I'm not supposed to do this, right? There was, on one of the tours here, there was a show in Minneapolis in a club where I didn't know that all the other artists, months in advance, had to send in their lyrics, and they were forbidden to sing like In the Name of Love by, U2, because it was a secular song, whatever that means. But, they were just, it was denied.
Oh, wow. Where was this at?
In Minneapolis.
Like some kind of club?
Yeah.
Like a Christian club.
A Christian club.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so I go up on stage. I don't know any of this. And I say, I am so honored to be in the city of one of my heroes. And I just want to, sing this in honor of Prince. And then I sang Kiss. And the organizers almost had a heart attack. And
they bring out the holy water
and
their crosses, start trying to exercise the kiss out of you.
And then, there's just been some of these weird encounters, and they're all my fault because I just didn't understand the culture enough. So in Nashville, when you go on tour with these bands, usually before the tour starts, you do like a practice run through, like several, obviously, of all these things. And there's like coaches and an audience, and it's a stage. You imagine there's an audience, and they tell you, well, if you do these moves, it might look better from my perspective, and all these different things. Well, there I am playing guitar for Paul Coleman, who had a very spiritual moment on stage, was actually getting into the song. He's on his knees, doing whatever he's doing. But I'm thinking, this is a rehearsal. I don't care. And I just lit up a cigarette right there in that building, which was before it was forbidden. And with all these CCM people there, just not knowing what the heck was happening and why am I doing what I'm doing. And I just didn't know. I just came from that different world in Europe where I probably would have had a bottle of vodka in my hand. It was weird. But it was I don't even know if it was my ignorance. It was ignorance mixed. It was stubbornness mixed with ignorance. It was a deliberate looking the other way and not minding being provocative.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like the Claas I know.
Yeah, probably.
That's good. Well, that's what I love about you.
It's my ministry.
That's what I love about you. That's awesome. Yes, that sounds like the Claas I know, for sure. For sure. Well, that's cool, though. I like that. I think that's why I love you.
Well, thank you. But let me just add this.
Yeah.
But one of the things that drove me away, like after one of these tours here, so I got a contract from the promoter, and it basically gave the guidelines and the standards and the rules for being on the road. Some of them were rather obvious. It was like, coming from Europe, this makes no sense to me, but knowing that the Christian world back then was like no alcohol, no smoking, no profanity, no girlfriends in hotel rooms, no nudity. That was terrible for me. And, all these different things. Oddly, it didn't mention overeating, but that's all right, or being prideful. But it had all these behavioral things, and, I knew I wanted...
Or gossip or backbiting,
exactly.
or,
yes,
whatever.
That was all allowed.
Encouraged, in fact.
So I signed it. I signed it because I thought, well, when in Rome, do as the Romans, whatever. I'm trying to not be difficult about these things. So I thought, it's all right. I can do this. I can not be naked for a spell. I'm just kidding. But so I show up, tour release party, huge mansion somewhere in Nashville, gated community, huge mansion. I ring the doorbell. The people inviting me open up, hand me a beer, show me the smoking corner, and I just fell apart. Like, well, is this a trap? You sent me this contract. I just signed it. Why the hell would you do this? Why would you offer me the things that you made me sign not to do? Oh, we're just doing that to be covered and protected in case someone catches you doing something. It's not that literal. It's like, oh, so you mean you will just throw me under the bus if I get caught?
Wow.
And it's just like, yeah, I can't, this is just not how I want to live my life.
Wow. Interesting. So I didn't realize it was duplicitous in black and white.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, I always knew that was there. Yeah. But I didn't realize that it was actually...
It's that bad. It's that bad. And I mean, and these are people I like. right? These are,
Sure.
I appreciate these people.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to talk bad about them. It's just the culture that they live in and that how they do business. And it's just not mine.
Yeah. Well, when the contemporary Christian music hit in the 80s, which is when I started listening to it, and I was a teen, young, and very young adult, and I remember, that stuff was floating around to where like that Why I Destroyed all my rock albums was all around. And it's like if Bob Dylan came to Jesus, then the Christian community didn't want Bob Dylan to do his secular music anymore.
Right.
They want him to do Slow Train Running.
Right.
Yeah. Or whoever.
Yeah.
If anybody came to Christ, then all of a sudden you're supposed to do all Christian music. You don't do any secular music anymore. And honestly, I liked Christian music and I liked secular music.
Yeah.
I got rid of my rock albums for a little while, and it wasn't very long before I wish I had them back. And it finally became like...
I don't know how often I've bought Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, because I bought it, then someone preached, got convicted, threw it away. A month later, bought it again. I think that's why they sold 30 million copies. Because the Christian kids just kept throwing it away.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Sometimes I wonder if like the publishing and record companies back then of like the Black Sabbaths and all those bands that were banned by the Christians, if they paid the preachers to ban them.
You wonder.
Because it's the best marketing ever.
It's like The Onion.
Yes.
Are you familiar with The Onion?
I think so.
It's a magazine that these guys put out from the University of Wisconsin for years, and all they do is write like alarming false information. Yeah. And run them and it's intentional.
Babylon B for Christians, right?
But a lot of the Christians then get a hold of these articles in The Onion, and they run them and try to raise money off them because they're the enemy. And and it's completely fabricated, right? Yeah. And so, you wonder. It's such a huge marketing. There's literally a market to get Christians riled up against something.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's a huge market.
And to get the teenagers then to want it.
That's the plan of Harry Potter from the very beginning. I remember I had parents coming to me in the 90s like, do we let our kids read Harry Potter? And I said, well, why don't you read it with them and just talk about it? It's like...
And back in the 80s, it was Tolkien. It was, The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Well, that's a cult. That's evil. Well, then the Christians figured out that Tolkien was a friend of C.S. Lewis.
So now it's okay.
And now it's okay.
Oh my, what a mess.
Yeah.
What a mess. God help us, right?
Yes. And maybe just some common sense.
Yeah.
And maybe just some...
Way too uptight about the wrong things.
Yes, absolutely.
Man. Well, interesting stuff. So, tell us just a little bit. I know you connected with Paul Coleman, and you guys... When did you guys connect? And you toured quite a bit with him, right?
Yeah.
For over a decade, probably?
We met in 2004. I was driving up to a gig and just had an atrocious conversation with a Nashville American music industry Christian, and just was very upset. And so I showed up at this mini festival in this silo in the south of Germany, and it, had the lineup there, and it said Paul Coleman, Nashville, Tennessee. And I was just, when I read that, I didn't know him. I had no idea what he's doing. I was just pissed. I was just mad. And that middle finger was on my forehead again. So when people said, got to meet him. He's so great. And I said, sure he is. So I walked up to him backstage. He was very kind, but the first thing I said to him was the worst thing I could think of is about his mother. Like literally, I've never done this before, never done it since, but the first thing was just the worst slap I could think of. And he just slapped right back, saying something even worse. And so I just smiled, he smiled, we hugged each other, and we were friends ever since.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, we did some projects and protest songs that we've written that we wanted to start this thing called the Mighty Misfits because it seemed like that's
German,
what we were.
right?
Yeah. And, but what we actually did a lot was Christmas touring, because it was in St. Paul and Santa Claus, where we just did like up to a month or 6 weeks of touring through Europe, doing our duo Christmas program. That was always fun.
Huh.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm trying to think when did you move back to Kansas City, or when did you move to Kansas City? What year was that? 2000.
I moved here in
2013.
I was here for a while, visa permitting, in 2012. But I couldn't stay. I couldn't move yet. So that's when we then applied for the visa after that.
Okay. When did you meet your wife?
I met her, I want to say it was 2009. I mean, as in I met her. That sounds like we were immediately started dating. No, as in we met as people, and then years went by until we started circling one another again around that time, 2012, late 2012, and became a couple in 13, which was complicated because I had just decided the visa was there to move to Kansas City, and she is from the south of Germany. And so we had a very long, I think it was Skype conversation, not that it matters, where this was before she wanted to officially be boyfriend, girlfriend, where she had a 4 pages long list of questions and conditions to the relationship, which I couldn't eat enough food for the amount that I wanted to vomit about that, because it just seemed like this is just silly.
Wow.
Turns out it isn't, because many things that we run into now we've talked about back then. So she was smart. I wasn't. But I had 2 things that I could put on my... Well, I have a list too.
I need that page of questions right now in my life. I know where I'll apply that.
Well, I'm sure she still has it somewhere.
You tell her. Fred needs those questions.
Well, I had 2 things on my list. One was I have a past. Can't change that. The second is I'm moving to Kansas City. So if you want to take this serious, you have to at least consider moving there as well. And so then we had a 2.5 year long distance relationship until we finally got married.
Very cool. Very cool. So prior to meeting her, I'm trying to think about how to ask this, but you went through a pretty dark period of time at some point.
I was in Scandinavia a lot, and it's dark during the winters. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But no, there was quite I don't know how long of a season it was for you. But you went through a pretty dark depression, would you call it? Kind of like
I was diagnosed with burnout and depression in 2010.
Okay.
I want to say, depression is not something that just, you don't catch it like COVID, right? It's, there's a crescendo that gets there. There's just a moment where it kind of maybe explodes, or there's a moment where you just can't hide it anymore, or there's a moment where finally someone looks at you and says you need help, or there's
believe me, I can relate.
Yeah. So I want to say I probably had been depressed 4 or 5 years before that. And just probably through self-medication, through hurting myself, through experience hunting, distractions is what I'm trying to, I think that's what I'm trying to look for, that word. Tried to cover up. And then 2010, it just resulted in panic attacks that I couldn't control anymore, that I couldn't hide, where I wasn't able to function. And thankfully there, I was able to call a family friend who's a doctor, and thank God I took that step and didn't try to self-medicate more.
Was that a doctor here in America or
no, that was
Germany?
That was in Germany.
Okay.
And he could hear in the tone of my voice what was going on, called me into his office. And then we talked about medication. We talked about lifestyle or perspective changes. We talked about taking time off. I had to cancel a lot of concerts. I had to cancel. I just had released something. Basically, the entire promo of that album I had to cancel. It was miserable.
Yeah.
But it also taught me a lot. It taught me, one of the things, when you're self-employed and when you are just kind of hustling and trying to, especially in music or in arts, trying to chase the dragon, the next big success, and it's always, that carrot in front of you. The question of how much could I do versus how much do I have to do? That might sound lazy, but there's like, how much money could I make versus how much money do I have to make? Changes your perspective, because I do enjoy the American capitalist society where it's like, anything goes. If you can try to start something new and you can hustle, do 3-4 jobs, to somehow live that American dream, I get it. I'm not saying it's wrong, but if it takes a toll on your mental health, maybe the question should be, how much money do I have to make? Not how much more could I make? And so that downscaling, that maybe I don't have to chase the dragon anymore. Maybe I can be content or satisfied with this and not look at what I've achieved and hate myself because I haven't achieved this. And maybe actually have some sort of healthy pride. Hey, I've done this. This is good. Mm-hmm. This is okay. I don't have to compare myself to somebody else who right now is making another zero on top of it.
Yeah. So for you, some of the key things that helped you recover would have been, one, was it a therapist doctor type person that you were seeing? Two, was it cutting back and reorganizing your priorities, it sounds like?
Yes.
And then
now,
what about friends and relationships?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't recommend this. I did not see a therapist officially. I have friends who are therapists that I hung out with and where I could call them anytime. So that's what I did. Now, that's a luxury situation that is way cheaper. Mm-hmm. But obviously, had I not had these relationships, therapy would have been the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just a shift of what am I looking at? It's like, you can, in your entire life, you can choose to look this way or that way, and you can choose to look at something in a glasses half full or half empty way, and it's the conscious decision to turn your head away from where it goes off the rail. Now, having said that, I am not healed of depression. That's always going to stay there. That's something that comes in waves. That's something that my wife knows this, and that we've had this in our marriage where I had to take her aside and say, hey, it's, the ugly head's coming here again of that darkness. And, but it's, now I'm not hiding it. I'm surrounding myself with people who I trust and who I can talk to about it. And that often takes a lot of the edge off already. It takes, because it's that darkness.
Yeah.
When you surround yourself with people and are able to share it in a way, it loses some of its terror.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine once said about depression that it's like an old friend from school, one that you didn't like, one that's destructive, who's knocking on your door, and he's not going to go away until you let him in. Mm-hmm. And what are you going to do? The good thing is you can let him in, but you kind of have to. It's going to come in. He's going to knock the door down if you don't. But he's going to leave again. And you can invite more friends to come over and sit there with you, and it'll be okay. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. Because if I remember right, that season in your life, not only the burnout from all the touring you were doing, but if I remember, there were a couple of really, really difficult relationships that sort of melted down, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, man.
Talking about this, I wish this weren't coffee.
Yeah, right. Well, but so you've been married now for what?
Oh my goodness, it'll be 7 years soon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That doesn't even seem possible.
Yeah.
Wow. 7 years. Have 2 beautiful kids.
Yes. Yes.
What are their names?
Kian and Emma. And I love them dearly. And I so wish I could sleep through the night.
How old are they?
Kian is 3 and Emma's going to turn 1 in just, what's today? 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, beautiful family. I love your wife, Denise, and so fun. So the last years that you've been here in Kansas City, you've been doing production, you've been doing songwriting, you've been connected with Vineyard and the worship ministry there.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of streams of work and ministry and whatever you want to call all that.
I mean, obviously the pandemic has put a stop to many things that I did. Like even the production side, there's me producing bands necessitates that these bands go on tour, right? Mm-hmm. So even if I can't tour and say, well, now I can produce, I need clients who can go on tour.
Right.
But anyway, I mean, I think it's about flexibility. I'm not worried. There's always something out there that one can do. And actually, I mean, I've done more than before the pandemic, as in it's all good.
Yeah. What projects are you currently working on? Is there?
Right now, I am finishing 2 albums. One is for an artist from Minneapolis, Justin Law, who you know.
Yes. And
the other one is a band down in Austin that I worked with early fall. We're in the final stages for that. And then there's some other things on the side. But yeah, those are the 2 major things that I need to get off my plate.
Yeah.
Really soon.
Okay. Awesome. How would people find your music?
Well, one of the things that my mother did not consider when she named me was that people need to be able to say, Alexa, play songs by Claas P. Jambor. That's difficult for people to say and for her to understand. So probably right here, if you do the spelling, if you could put it right here, I'm sure that's possible somehow digitally, right?
Matt?
Of my name, then you can find that on the YouTubes and internets, and there's a plethora on Spotify.
CLAAS P.Jambor.
Yes. And it's every major streaming platform. Has something.
So many great songs that you've written.
Thank you.
And I was having fun as I was getting ready for this interview. I was kind of re-listening through your whole deal over the last few days, and I was, it took me back many years, all the way up to your current stuff that you did, your 8 album, that you released a couple years ago. Yeah, fun stuff. I love that Cold Water song.
Yes,
that's a beautiful. I love the imagery of that. And then you and Paul did a song on that 8 album that I thought was excellent.
The In Your Name.
Yeah. And it was kind of like a song grieving all the crap that's gone down in the name of Jesus that isn't anything like Jesus.
Yeah.
Kind of song. But it's really, really thought-provoking.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with we killed those who disagree, made slaves with those, who once were free, and it's and all that in your name, and it just goes down that, and it's we as Christians, me as an individual, but also us as the body of Christ, as Christians, have just hurt and destroyed so many lives by taking quote unquote truth, whatever we perceived as truth, and just using it as a sword and just chopping people to death. It's but then interestingly, we change our mind about the truth a couple of years later, and then we chop someone else to death, and then we disagree with something, and then we're chopped to death, and it's just this entire thing is we need to stop using that sword and hurting one another.
Yeah. I'm all about radical grace-based community these days. That's really, to me, that's the only place to live and be and hang out with those kind of folks. So, yeah. Well, let's have you close us with a song on this podcast. One that you'd like to choose. What would you like to choose?
Hey, I don't know.
Well, I'm not going to choose it for you. So,
right.
We're gonna shift gears. Let you get your guitar, and let's close our podcast out with one of your songs.
Sounds good.
All right.
Song Stars. Down the street, there's a little house with a yard where we used to play. We were kids, we were innocent, but then now we meet again and speak to me of wild ideas and say my name, and then we'll fly to the stars, fly to the stars, and run away and fall in love for the very first time. Down the past there's a little thought with a dream between you and I. Never thought just how intimate we were, woven through our childlike hearts, and speak to me of wild ideas and say my name, and then we'll fly to the stars, fly to the stars, and run away and fall in love for the very first time. Took a long time for me to see how close I needed you to be. Down the street there's a little house with a yard where we used to play. Fly to the stars. Fly to the stars. Fly to the stars and run away and fall in love for the very first time.
Yay. All right. Thank you, Claas. Excellent. I love that song.
Thank you.
I've shared that with so many people. So thanks for joining us on Spirituality Adventures. And everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.